Without a vision, the people perish. Welcome to Vision Plus, a program featuring a positive outlook, dealing with everyday situations of marriage, children, and business with challenges and opportunities. Believing Philippians 4:13. You and I can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. Teacher, author, speaker, delighting audiences from New York to Sacramento with a heart and message for the people today. Here's Bonnie Libhart.
Hello and welcome. Has it seemed like for you that you observe more people with cancer and life-threatening diseases lately? It just seems like it is, and I got to thinking about it. One of the reasons is because we're all living a lot longer, praise the Lord. Sometimes it's not, praise the Lord, with some of the things some people go through. But it used to be that the lifetime average was in the 40s, and then the 50s, and now it's 70s, and my mom lived till she was 96 years old, and a lot of people are living to be much older. So that gives us an opportunity to have a good life. I know my mom used to joke, I'm sure she heard someone else say, well, if I'd known I was going to live this long, I'd taken better care of myself. But actually, she did take good care of herself. She had a garden until she was 94, and she had her bright mind up until, I guess, the moment she died. I was there a week or so beforehand, but I'd gone through, my husband's 3 brothers died in a period of time. We got home from Pennsylvania when one of the persons had died, and the next morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, got a call that my mom had passed. But I don't have regrets because my mom and I had a great relationship. Now, my dad had already died, and I've had kind of a fortunate thing in that I don't know anyone in the family that had cancer. Alzheimer's maybe, but not cancer. But no, my dad it was dementia, they called it at the time, but it's probably Alzheimer's. But the thing about life-threatening diseases is that there are people who are healed from those, have incredible miracles, and we don't know why some people do and some people do not. But if you know someone that has some type of life-threatening disease, you may want to give them a call and say, hey, come listen to this program. They're going to be talking about one person that had a miracle, that had a life-threatening disease and was healed from it. And her name is Frances Dempsey. Frances, welcome to television.
Thank you,
and thank you so much for coming all the way to, actually we drove almost a couple of hours for you to be here to do the television show. And also we have on the program Jean and Chuck Patterson, and we have them here for another special reason. They were somewhat involved in, tell us about what brought you up to a time when you found out you had cancer.
Well, about mid-2000, I began to have some discomfort, and I really didn't give it a lot of thought that it could be anything like that. But in May of 2001, I really had a bad spell and had to go to the emergency room. And it was from then they did a lot of tests and I found a mass in my lower right abdomen. And so they put me in the hospital, admitted me to the hospital. And on Sunday, the 20th of May, they did surgery. And the surgeon came into the waiting area and told my husband, my family, and my friends that it looked like that it was cancer. And at that time, it really looked bad. I mean, he presented it to the family as a really bad situation. And so, of course, I was, drugged and kind of out of it, and I really didn't know what was going on. So until, several days later.
And then some incredible things happened. But first of all, this lady sitting next to your right gave me a call, as I'm sure she did probably a couple hundred other people.
Right.
And she said, Frances Dempsey is in the hospital and it really looks serious.
Yes.
Start praying. Get it on the prayer chain. Jean, tell me about when you heard about it. Now,
Well-
your husband was her physician at the time.
Right. What happened is her daughter called me and said, Jean, Mama's got cancer. And I said, oh, no. We'll curse it. We just didn't believe like that. So Chuck and I went by the hospital and we laid hands on Frances. And I know that, of course, we started calling other people too. I know that God had already touched her. The doctor called back, Dr. Bandy, he called back the next day and he said, it's gone. We can't find it. And I said, yes, Lord, that's one of your things that you do. And of course, we believe in prayer, and we pray with our patients in our office, which Frances had to be sent to our emergency room. But God is so good.
Oh, Dr. Chuck, when you first heard it, tell us some of your thoughts and feelings about what was going on.
Well, that's a difficult question because when you hear an announcement like that from the pathologist, that you think, well, that's...
And you trust Dr. Bandy
Well-
to the nth degree.
Well, Dr. Bandy is a surgeon, not a pathologist, but he's a good surgeon, and he's honest, and he knows what he's talking about. However, there are other things that can change, and things changed in Francis' case, and that the cancer was no longer there, and we have only one thought about that.
Yeah, that's good. God answer. Go ahead.
Actually, the Lord had already healed me before I realized that I had been so sick.
Because when you came really aware of everything again, what happened? What did your husband tell you?
Well,
and all
on Saturday night, before surgery on Sunday, our pastor came by also to pray and told me, I feel like that you're going to get a bad report. And she said, we're not going to believe the report of man. We're going to believe the report of the Lord. And so I just never thought anything else about it, you know. Isaiah 53:1 says, who hath believed our report? And so I just, that was in me, you know, that I was not going to believe the doctor's report, that I was going to believe the report of the Lord. And I had a peace. I just had a peace. I can't explain it, but I had a peace in my heart that everything was going to be okay.
And it was.
And it was.
And so that was just, you were on your way to total healing.
Yes.
Here you are on television ready to sing.
And my husband asked the doctor, he said, well, does she have to have any kind of treatment or anything? And he said, no, I don't foresee any kind of treatment in her future at all.
Yeah. No,
So
you didn't have to have a chemotherapy?
I never had to
or
have any
anything?
treatment at all.
And there are some people that are healed that go ahead and have the treatment.
Right.
Because another person that we knew there in Huntsville, she had gone on a trip to Rhode Island to her family and found, just doing self-examination of her breast, and found that she had a tennis-sized lump and came home and it was cancer. And she went on through it, the surgery and the chemotherapy, but now she is so totally healed and it has never come back again. That's been 10 years ago or so.
We have a friend who's quite a well-known person in the laboratory business that came in the office a year or so ago, and he had a diagnosis of cancer, and this was in his stomach, and this was a definite diagnosis, but he came in the office, and he had some prayer offered to him, and he keeps sending us emails on a regular basis saying that he's doing great. Been 2 years.
Well, as you all three know, and many of the viewers, that my husband was diagnosed with prostate cancer, but he's believing in healing and hadn't had any surgery or anything at this point. But I think you encouraged him a lot by telling him that a person can live for many years with prostate cancer and at the same time do just great, or they can have surgery.
Now, we're not recommending ignoring the signs of
no.
cancer, and we're not advocating denying its
No.
existence, but some things happen, some things can change, that this is not always a death sentence, and there can be intervention but the proper follow-up needs to be done.
Absolutely. And he is doing that, and I'm sure that he is. I'd like to say it's more often than I want, maybe than he wants it. I'd like it more often, but that's okay. Now we want to hear you sing, and what are you going to sing for us?
Is anything too hard for God?
All right, so we're going to get to hear Frances Dempsey sing Is Anything Too Hard for God? And she's a person that I've heard her on television about 12, 14 years ago, and so she's going over to the other place now and sing, so if you would do that. And we look forward to hearing her say that, but it's something that maybe you want to think about too. Is anything too hard for God? Because there's a lot of times in our lifetime that we think that we're hearing a death sentence. And I know in our case, we had started building a house, even as mature senior citizens, because my husband, even though he worked full-time, he had thought about, well, maybe I'll just build houses for a few houses a year. So we had started that before he ever heard about the cancer. So now he says he's going to finish the house before he goes back for, if he needs to have surgery at that time. But sometimes you don't have to have surgery, sometimes you do. But whatever you do, I always believe that God put physicians on this earth to follow their advice. And we would always follow Dr. Patterson's advice. Whatever he would say for us to do, that's what we want to do. And is anything too hard for God? Let's find out from Frances Dempsey. Is anything too hard for God? And is anything too hard for God? We would say, no, it isn't. That we have to lay it at the feet of the cross. There's a lot of us going through a lot of things. I think the whole world is in anticipation of what's going to happen in Iraq, what's going to happen in our schools, what's going to happen in our country. There's so many people, highest unemployment there's been in many years, 6%. And there's so many challenges that we have. Family, whether it's blended families, whether it's just, so many of us have children that we're just so concerned about. In the public schools since 1962, when they took prayer out of the public schools. And many of us, just like Michael and Kimberly Lee, their children are homeschooled. And the homeschooling group is growing by leaps and bounds every year. And there's many states, I know Tennessee already has it, where you can choose the school that you want to go to. And you may have an opportunity to homeschool your children or to do some things that you think you need to do in order to have your family to be what God would want them to be. If you've gone through some real tragedies or traumatic things, whether it's cancer or any other life-threatening or a blended family or just the challenge, financial, emotional, physical, spiritual, then God has an answer for you. You know, He says in Psalms 84:11 that the Lord, our Lord, is your sun and shield. He will give grace and glory. No good thing will be withheld from him who walks uprightly, him and her who walk uprightly. We can say that in another way. The Lord is our sun. He lights our way. Shield. He protects us from everything. When we put on the whole armor of God, you know He doesn't say anything about our rear because He has His angels. He Himself protects our rear because He talks about the helmet of salvation, the gird about our loin with truth, our feet are shod with the gospel of peace, and we have the shield of faith, the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. And all of that protection, we don't have to worry about the rear because He protects that. We need to be like Paul and not look to the past, but go forth to the future. And you know what? We, like Paul, many times do what we don't want to do, don't do what we should do. I just love it when I can read about the great man, the Apostle Paul. Though he was a man that stood there as when he was named Saul and held the coat of Stephen, man that was God's loved man, a great man of God, Stephen. And he held his coat, Paul did, while Stephen was being stoned to death. And later, when God met Paul on the road of Emmaus, and He said, I hope I have that right road. If not, Gene will correct me, or Paul, Chuck, or one of them. But God struck him blind, and he said, "What have I done, God? And what do you want me to do?" And He said that you are against Jesus Christ. You are against my Son. And so Paul was blinded for 3 days. Then he went away for 14 years while he was studying. God was dealing with him, and you read about all the things in Revelation and so many of the other books about what he went through. So we don't have to be struck down to be blinded by what God can do in our life. But we need to place all of those things, the financial, the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, at the feet of Christ. And here is three people that have done that, Gene and Chuck Patterson. Some of you were able to hear a program they did in the past about blended families. But they're here now. Welcome back again, Chuck and Gene Patterson and Francis Dempsey. Chuck, you're a medical doctor. You've seen things that happen like what has happened to Francis that is unexplainable as a medical doctor. But we see that there can be healing. It takes the doctors in this world to bring healing to us because they know how to diagnose some of the things that happen to us and give us medicine And I know sometimes the medicine it can be given to us wrong, and that happened to me one time.
That
And
can
you
happen.
actually, hey, you even came to our home, you and Jean did, and came to my bedroom because I was getting worse and worse. But it had happened that the pharmacist or one of his assistants had given us the wrong medicine. You were able to see, that's not what I prescribed for you. And that happens sometimes.
Yeah, no, none of us are human. I mean, we're all human.
Yeah.
We all make
Yeah.
mistakes. But,
We haven't started walking on
that's
water
right,
yet,
I
have we?
haven't learned how to do that yet.
So-
But I think there's a lot to be said that more and more physicians are recognizing the fact there's more than just medicine out there, that we, in our office, do a lot of listening. There's some people do a lot of talking, but we tend to listen to the patient in our office. And I think most of the time, if you listen carefully enough, the patient will tell you what's wrong with them. And then it's up to us to try to send them down the right direction. But more and more physicians, I think, are realizing the fact that there's more to healing than just prescribing a pill and doing some surgery. We try to take the whole situation into account and try to find out where the patient's coming from, what he's been through, and try to find out what the circumstances are that led to his problem. And then, like I say, we do offer prayer in our office, and our patients are our friends. They're not numbers that come in the door. Jean, would you like to add to that?
Well, I do want to ask also that you said you pray for your patient, your prayers available if you kind of
But
are
it's
led
not
by the
inflicted
Spirit.
on anybody.
Oh no, but if
somebody
they
desires it, it's
yes,
available.
and sometimes they'll even ask you to pray for them. But you work as a team there. You got a great group of people that work. Joe and
Right,
Karen and
right.
all the people that work with you are just incredible
They love people, too.
And you do some other things like the laser surgery for the veins for the
We've done some of the leg vein, spider veins, and
Yes.
red spots. But right now, it's we have less time to do that than other things in the office.
Now, and you have all ages that come in there. You're not just a pediatrician, you're not just for adults, but you have all ages. How do you know what questions to ask adults? Then I'm going to ask you, how do you know what questions do you ask teenagers?
Well, just by listening, asking questions, and even the child, I found that you don't just talk to the parent or the child. You talk to the child. You ask the child, no matter what age he is, and they listen to you.
Well,
And,
give me an idea of a question you could ask to get
little
some
girl.
answers.
That little girl.
How was school today?
Oh, okay. You kind of become their friend first.
Yeah, what do you enjoy doing? Let's see that coloring book. And in assessing a child's development, you can kind of find out where they are in school and what their interests are. So you don't just walk up to a child and start looking in their ears. You ask permission. May I look in your ears? Can I see your throat? Can I listen to your lungs?
What
So-
about the 14 to 17-year-old, the most difficult age in some cases?
I treat them like normal human beings.
Normal human beings.
Yes.
And what would that be? How do you ask a teenager a question that you get
Act
an
like they're
answer?
part of you, one
I-
thing.
Yes, I just the same way I'm talking to you. I say,
Yeah.
what's the problem?
And they'll start talking to you?
They usually start talking.
Well, they're expected, oh, you shut up, and so what are they going to do?
They just keep
First
talking.
person that talks loses, I guess. You just
That's right.
listen. All of us I need to learn how to do that better. My husband said he would talk more but he hates to interrupt. So maybe, especially us women. I was thinking about all of my husband, there's 6 brothers, and all the 3 that really married big talkers. And that's really strange. I remember riding from Washington, D.C. to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and the man, his brother, didn't say a word because I just realized his wife and I were doing all the talking all the way. So you've learned to listen. How can we incorporate that into our regular marriage and life with teenagers?
Well, I think a person has to talk some. But I found that if I'm talking, I don't hear what other people are saying. So it's like a two-way radio. You have to have the transmit switch and you have to have the receive switch. So I have the transmit switch and I have the receive switch. I try to make it equal, but I do feel that a lot can be gained by listening.
Mm-hmm. Jean, you're even a good listener too.
Yeah.
Got two
I find
listeners
it very
in the family.
easy to. Lord shows me things when people come in, and I can sense these things, and God says, "Okay, your time." And I really feel that. I know that's why that we haven't retired. We're 66 and almost 70, so I know that God has us there for a
Now,
reason.
69 sounds a lot younger
Oh,
than
but that's
70.
not. That's right. But you know,
He's not 70
no.
yet.
But we're not old. We're still young, and Jesus
You
adds
really are.
years to your life. I think when you live for the Lord, I believe He adds more. And when you testify for Him and love Him and obey Him and trust Him, even more life.
Now, he's given you a lot of inventions, in fact, over the years.
Oh, yeah.
And some that are still current.
Even when I was a child, I invented a perpetual motion machine that my dad said wouldn't work, and it still hasn't worked yet. But I've always admired Edison and some of the other inventors, and actually have had an opportunity to meet several well-known inventors in my lifetime, and people that have made discoveries. But when I was, I guess about 30 years ago, I invented a culture tube and got a patent on it, but since then the technology's changed, so it's no longer applicable. But we've had several ideas that.
Well, you got one right now. Do you want to share that with us?
Okay, several years ago, a friend of mine and I were flying, and I'm a pilot, and he is too, and we were about 3,000 feet. And I turned to Joe and said, "Joe, let's put a strain gauge in the head of a golf club and see how hard we're hitting the ball." And Joe, as an electrical engineer, looked at me and said, "Yeah, I think we would do that." So we have been working on this idea for the past several years, and we have a patent on it. And hopefully, in the very near future, it will be on the market to allow a golfer to see exactly where he's hitting the golf ball on the club face. It gives a biofeedback type of mechanism, so that there's a display on the grip of the club, so you can see what you're doing. And this is biofeedback is a form of telling your body what you're doing remotely.
And then we can all become.
Better golfers.
There you go.
Well, actually, this will not put the golf pros out of business. It will only enhance their teaching.
Yeah, okay. And in fact, it could be something that could something like that sell on QVC or one of those.
It
I
could
just
be.
wondered.
We're working on
Infomercials.
a way to promote this. And by the way, it's called Trophy Shot. I don't mind telling the name.
Okay, now we
Trophy
know,
Shot is,
and you're not afraid to tell us because it is something that's. Well, now I wanted to hear you guys sing again, so we are going to have an opportunity in a future program to hear them singing some another song, or maybe together we'll just hear all of that. But I want to thank Francis Dempsey and Dr. Charles Patterson and his wife Jean Patterson, and for coming to share not only the music with us, but their testimony, and say that they do other things in addition to being Christians. They have also inventions and work together in a blended family, and just a delight to have them here. And they live at the moment, one of their places is in Huntsville, Alabama, and they also have what they call a cabin, sleeps 12 or so in Gatlinburg, and I think something down in Florida. So they're just a fun people to be around. Chuck and Jean Patterson, and so are you. We're glad you joined us. If there's anything you want to say to us, toll free 877-823-6886. I'm Bonnie Libhart. Bless your heart for watching.